There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. I am your host, Tom Hiddleston, and I am filled with glorious purpose. Or a chicken burrito. One of the two. Hey, tonight we are going to focus on Loki. That's right. The show finally dropped. It's back, and I'm hoping you have all had a chance to sit down and watch it. So we are going to do a spoiler-filled review and discussion where if you guys have any questions or comments, want to give your opinions or theories, you are welcome to add them into the show. And I'm going to give a recap and review, but there will be 100% spoilers. I believe we have a new graphic for spoilers, JD. I like that. All right. So, yeah, no, Kyle, we are definitely going to be playing the spoiler warning a few times during the show, just in case. So, but we are going to jump into it. I really didn't check the rest of the news today. Today was all about Loki. I have now watched the episode 3 times. The first one was when it dropped at midnight on midnight Tuesday, Wednesday here in LA. We got to put the overlay up here. JD, there we go. So I watched it then I watched it again this morning when I woke up, and then I watched it just about an hour ago, just as I was putting my notes together in my overview of the show. And I'm going to give you my first thoughts on it before I get deep into it. Thank God the MCU is back. We are only in the we're still in the first half of 2021, and this is the third MCU series to debut in the first half of 2021, but it feels like it's been forever since Falcon and Winter Soldier ended. I have been anticipating this show, and I will say honestly, it lived up to my expectations and more. I am really, really blown away by how good this show was. It had some basic things it had to cover. It had to introduce us to the TVA, establish that the idea of the sacred timeline and all of that. It had to kind of make up for the ground that we've lost by Loki actually dying and us taking the 2012 version of Loki instead. Because there was a lot of character growth in Thor the Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers, and Infinity War. He didn't make it to Endgame. So there was a lot of character growth there that is suddenly gone. We're set back to the end of the Avengers. So we kind of needed to regain that ground. And we just had to start setting up why the TVA would even be interested in Loki in the first place, why they wouldn't just kill off a variant. So that was the checklist going into the show. Could they pull all of that off in 45 minutes? And the show itself was 51 minutes, but there's about 6 minutes of credits. So in 45 minutes, Were they able to do all that? And my answer is hell yeah. They absolutely were. This probably is... It depends the type of fan you are, but I think for a lot of people, this is going to be the best premiere of a Disney series. You might like Falcon and Winter Soldier better because of all the action. And if you're into the action, that's why you watch this stuff, then yeah, you'll probably like Falcon a little better. There was very little action in all of this, other than Loki getting hit in the little skirmish with B-15. Otherwise, there was no action in this show. This was a lot of talky, not a lot of action. So Sean Butler says, I personally had no expectation for the show, but I was pleasantly surprised by how good it was. And I really felt Tom and Owen had a great on-screen chemistry. Absolutely agree with you. I think the chemistry between Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson was spot on, and what is going to make this show work. It's going to make this a good show. I likened this to the other day in the pre-show. Now, I'll admit I have not seen the second episode. There's a lot of people out there who do what I do, and they were given the first 2 episodes going in. Not me. Nope. Disney doesn't know me yet. Disney doesn't love me. So I didn't get the first 2 episodes, and I'm okay with that. I'm happy seeing it with everybody else. But before going into it, I kind of got the idea that this was going to be, a little bit 48 hours, the whole Nick Nolte, Eddie Murphy relationship, and a little bit Doctor Who, Rick and Morty, time traveling weirdness. Probably a little more Rick and Morty than Doctor Who, or if you want a more recent reference on the other side of it, instead of 48 hours, the Miggs Mayfield episode of The Mandalorian, where they get Miggs out of prison. And see, I can talk about this because we've got spoiler warning still too, so if you haven't seen Mandalorian. But they get him out of prison and he helps them, and you see character growth, and they kind of get a good rapport going. And that's what we get, I think we're going to get here. But let me start my overall recap. Sean says that's a really good analogy, 48 hours, as far as character relationship. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, and I think that's what it's going to be. I don't see Owen Wilson pulling off the Nick Nolte role of the gruff cop, the overly violent cop, but otherwise I think it's a good analogy going on. All right, so now the episode itself is called Glorious Purpose, and of course that is the line that Loki has said multiple times. And, so it's a great title for the first episode because that is what he said in the Avengers. And that is where we leave that character. This is the death of that character and the rebirth of something new. It's written by Michael Waldron, who we know has come out of Rick and Morty. He's also written Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. He's working on the show Heels for Stephen Amell. But what got him this job was a spec script he did called The Most Hated Man in the World, or The Worst Man in the World, about a time traveler and a woman who's chasing him and how they fall in love. So it had that feel, and I guess Kevin Feige went, yep, that's our guy. And keep in mind, Kevin Feige has picked him also to write the Star Wars movie that they're going to do. So now this was directed by Kate Herron, and I don't really know much of her background, but I think the episode is fantastic. So good on her. Sean says, I am, though, very curious on if the dangerous variant they recruited Loki to catch is actually himself. Actually Loki himself, or Mobius himself. That would be interesting. I think it's a version of Loki, but we're not going to see who that version is. Because if we were going to see who it was right away, we wouldn't have gotten a hooded figure at the end. We would have seen who that's going to be. Skrulls. Yep, they're all Skrulls. Everybody is Skrulls. We even get a Skrull in here. But, all right, let's go into the breakdown. The opening gives us the Avengers Endgame, Avengers from 2012 with Loki, Tom Hiddleston, getting the Tesseract and disappearing. Now, if you pay close attention, you'll notice that some of the footage is actually different than what we saw in either of the other films. You know, the way when he changes into Captain America, and it's more robotic than the version in the original Avengers movie. So you can see that they've pulled some footage from the archives to do this. But since there's a variance, you got to wonder when the Loki variance was created. Because if that is varied right there before he gets the Tesseract, was he already a variant at that point? Because if taking the Tesseract and moving with it or using it is what caused the variance, then that shouldn't have been different. But we also see a different scene. We get a close up of Loki in the elevator, and we didn't get that. Now they go through this, and it's just like I said. It's mainly the recap. They don't do the full scene, but we get bits of it, and then we go into the Marvel logo. But this, of course, is tainted green and gold to make it a Loki logo. And that's when things get interesting. That's the teaser or the opening. Then Act 1 is basically introducing us to the TVA. And that's the big part. That's the world building. We start off in the Gobi Desert, and he suddenly just appears in the sky and plummets to the dirt or to the sand below. And I'm not sure why he's suddenly moving when he just simply takes this thing in steps. But now he's jetting through the sky, and he hits the ground, and very reminiscent of Iron Man or Tony Stark in the first Iron Man movie, when he comes out in the Mark I armor and tries to fly off and crashes into the desert a ways away. So I think there was a little homage there. Now, immediately after he lands, he tries to speak to the locals. They don't speak what he speaks, not the same language. And the Minutemen showed up, followed by Hunter B-15, who is Wunmi Mosaku. And she hits him with his, they try to take him in quietly. He doesn't want to go. She hits him with his baton and basically hits him so hard into 1/16 speed, which allows her to put the time twister collar on him. Now, something to notice here is the color of the baton tips. Her baton tip, when she does this, is purple. The other Minutemen around her all have orange tips or glow on their batons. And later on, when we see one of them use them to disintegrate somebody, it's orange. So she basically was in the stun mode, and they're in kill mode, or prune mode, I think is what they refer to it as. But they put the time twister thing on him. They pick up the Tesseract. They put down the device to reset the timeline. And they head off through a time door. JD asks, is she the Mace Windu of the TVA? She's definitely the badass, but no, her baton is orange later on in the show. So it is a set. I believe it's a setting, but it would be funny if she just had a purple baton. That would be cool. Now, when they come through the door, that's when we start learning about the TVA. B-15 and Loki arrive, and there's a scroll. So somebody mentioned a scroll earlier. There is already a scroll in a tracksuit. And I heard somebody question whether that was a variant from the Hawkeye miniseries, because there's the tracksuit mafia in the Matt Fraction Hawkeye run, and they're supposed to be in the Hawkeye series. So the fact that he's in a tracksuit, does that tie into Hawkeye? I wouldn't go that far. At least I wouldn't assume that unless they come back and tell us. But they go up to the desk. Oh, Loki tries to run away at one point, and we get to see what the Time Twister does. He runs across the room. She presses a button, comes right back to where he was. He runs again, presses a button. He comes back. And that's what the Time Twister does. It basically pulls people through their own timeline. It's a pretty neat device. Now, they go up to the desk, and that's where we meet Casey, who is played by Eugene Cordero, who may be the best character in this whole series. I like Casey. And I love the fact that they give him the Tesseract, and he's like, can you tell me what it is? And when Loki tries to explain, it's the Tesseract, you must be careful with it, or whatever, his response is, sounds dumb. I just like the character. He's that everyman that we got with Jimmy Woo in WandaVision, or maybe Ramirez in Falcon and Winter Soldier. But I hope he sticks around. He gets his name in the credits, and hopefully that's a sign we're going to see more of him. Now, we also meet another variant who reminds me of that Scarelli guy, or whatever his name was, the drug guy that tried to raise the price of EpiPens. Maybe they're making a political statement there. I don't know. But he talks about his dad is a board member on Goldman Sachs. And, of course, the TVA don't care. Loki is then pushed into a room where there's a giant robot who strips him of his fine Asgardian leather. And if you're anywhere near my age, you might remember the old Ricardo Montalban commercials for the Chrysler Cordoba and the fine Corinthian leather. The way he says that reminded me of that. Fine Asgardian leather. But it's gone. He drops through, and somehow as he drops through, it's like the bat poles in the old 66 Batman series. He comes down in the bottom in the full beige TVA jumpsuit. And there we get to see a pencil pusher guy who has a stack of papers saying, please sign this for everything you've ever said. And all I could think of is, as much as Loki likes to talk, that can't possibly be everything he's ever said. There should have been like a wheelbarrow next to him with more and more pages. There should have been stacks of papers around for everything that Loki has said, even up through 2012. But Sean says, for whatever reason, I found the robot rather funny, probably because of the way it smiled. That was a creepy robot. I think it liked stripping people. That's what I took from it. It's a creepy robot. But the other thing in the room with the sign for everything that you've ever said is there's a cat on the desk. But we're in the MCU. So, of course, you have to wonder, is it a cat or is it a flurkin? Because it could be either. And also, I love the fact that the cat's on the desk and the guy has a cup with the cat's face on the cup. Very, very pencil pusher, very Cube Farm type stuff, which is great. Again, grounded in reality. You're in the middle of the Time Variance Authority and they're grounding stuff in reality. Then drops through another room and we get somebody what basically looks like a metal detector, but he's asked, we need you to confirm that you're not a robot and basically have what people would consider a soul. And at that moment, Loki's like, well, wait, people don't know if they're a robot? Wait, what if I'm a robot? And when he finally goes through, he gets his temporal aura taken. And then he's released into the most DMV-looking room of all, with these big, windy lines like you'd see at Disneyland. And the Scarelli variant is in there, and they tell him, take a ticket. And he's like, no, I'm not taking a ticket. And he goes about his way, and Loki walks up, and they go, take a ticket. And Loki's like, there's only two of us in here. He's like, take a ticket. So Loki takes a ticket. And, of course, that's a good thing, because what we'll find out in a minute. But as we get in there, Loki, of course, yells out, "This is a mistake. I shouldn't even be here." And of course, the next thing that happens is Miss Minute, the narrator, comes on and says, "You're probably saying this is a mistake and I shouldn't even be here." JD says, "The room felt like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy." Oh, yeah, absolutely. There is a heavy Douglas Adams feel going on in the creation of the TVA. And it wouldn't be, and it carries over from the comics. And I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't pull from his run on Doctor Who and his, as the showrunner on Doctor Who and his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series to create the TVA. I mean, there's a high connection between the two. But what happens when you hear the narration by Miss Minute, who is Tara Strong, by the way, the voice of Harley Quinn, or the original voice of Harley Quinn, she narrates what might be the most important few minutes in the show, because it establishes everything we need to know about the TVA. How there was a multiversal war because of there being so many different timelines, and how the timekeepers kind of mushed them all together into the sacred timeline, and how they created the TVA to protect that. And they say they created the TVA. They don't say they've recruited people. So it's possible that everybody working in the TVA is just a creation of the timekeepers, which explains something we find out from Casey later on, which is he doesn't know what a fish is. Because there's a good chance he's never left the TVA. He's always working. He's always there because that's what he was created for. Miss Minutes also explains what a Nexus event is, not to be confused with a Nexus entity or whatever it is they refer to the Scarlet Witch as, who is someone who is a consistent across all multiverses. A Nexus event is when somebody somehow deviates from the timeline and creates a variant. And the longer that variant goes, it creates more and more changes till eventually there's a point where it creates another multiverse. And that's what they're trying to prevent. So they have to be quick. The Minutemen have to get out there. The hunter has to find the variant. They have to reset the timeline and put it all back to keep the sacred timeline. Now, some interesting thing made me and then they go on, but something that interesting came to my mind is they talk about how there was this multiversal war, and we know that the TVA exists outside of the timeline. So they're basically looking at they're not looking at the timeline as part of it. They're looking at it in front of them, and they see all of it. And if they're seeing all of it, then we don't know where things take place to them. Because when they talk about something, saying a long time ago, as they describe the multiversal war took place a long time ago in reference to what? Could the multiversal war they're talking about be in our future, be in that Loki's future? Could that be the multiverse of madness that Doctor Strange is going to be? Just because they say it's in the past doesn't mean it's in the past of that moment, because going into full Matthew McConaughey, time is just a square circle or a flat circle, when you look at it. And that's the thing, is that the multiversal war could be in front of us. Just a thought on that. So once the timeline is fixed and the variants are brought back, they are judged. And that part got me, because what's the other option? What's the plan B for a variant? They erase it. So why are they judging? Do they ever put them back in the timeline? Because they're a variant, their timeline doesn't exist anymore. They're just out there. So, Or maybe the TVA is filled with a bunch of variants that they then recruit. Could be. That is what is going to happen to Loki here. But, and when, so we get this video, and as we come out of the video, she even says, remember your ticket. And then the guard asks the other variant for his ticket, and he says, the other guy didn't give me one. I asked for one. He didn't give it to me. And the guard just disintegrates him. Gone. Completely. Well, Loki at that point is like, and finds his ticket and holds it up real high. And we cut into the logo. And the logo is got this kind of X-Files-ish creepy music going on. And the letters are all scrolling through. They're always mismatched fonts. They never match up. But and it's this very dull white, like dirty white on black, which is kind of an interesting choice for the whole thing. It has that like I said, like an old UFO sci-fi feel to the opening. Now, when we come back, we've established now the world building. That was the world building part of it, and that was important and needed to get done. And that was that first checklist. Boom, got it done. The second part was moving Loki along. The third part was establishing why they want Loki. And that starts in Aix-en-Provence, France, 1549. I may have got that name wrong, but we meet Mobius M. Mobius, who is played by Owen Wilson, and he's investigating what appears to be a group of Minutemen who had been ambushed in a church. Now, it's described to him what's going on. Hunter U-92, who's played by Derek Russo, is there, and he plays a part in this a little bit. But we find out that this is like the 6th ambush attack in a week, and each time the little reset charge is taken. So whoever is doing this, that's what they want, is the reset charge. Or they may just want to kill Minutemen. It could be a hobby, but they take the reset charge. And as they're talking about this boy comes in. And, of course, the hunter pulls out the staff, and it's glowing orange, so he's set to disintegrate. And Mobius is like, no, calm down. And he tells the kid in French, I'm sorry about this, my friend's an imbecile. And then Hunter U-92 just goes, in French, he goes, I speak every language in the timeline, jackass. But Mobius does his thing. He tries to talk to the kid, discovers that he saw who did it, and he points to this stained glass of the devil on the wall. Now, the stained glass is dressed in a green robe and has got a red face and these big horns. But according to the director and the writer, this is not Mephisto. Okay? Do not start the Mephisto BS. This is not Mephisto. He's not going to be in the show. We don't need to go down the Mephisto road again. We went down there with WandaVision. We spent a long time down the Mephisto road. Leave it over there. We are on a different road. And if you think about it, the big horns, the green outfit, kind of Loki-ish, just the red face is different. So we're thinking it's a variant Loki. It's not Mephisto. Okay. So, which is interesting. Mobius's response to that is he's not surprised. It's like he expected that's who it is. Who are some of the other devil characters in the Marvel universe? Well, that's the thing is, I like I said, I don't think it's supposed to be the devil. I think it's an interpretation of Loki. But it could be Mephisto, but devil characters, Mephisto, Blackheart could probably be considered a devil-like. There's a lot of demonic creatures like Suge Knight. I can't think of the Suge Menaroth or whatever. They all sound like Cthulhu villains, or elder gods. But yeah, there's quite a few. But like I said, I don't think they're referring to the devil. Now, Mobius does say that devil is afraid of us. So that's another reason I don't think it's Mephisto. And just as they're about to use the he also notices the kid's got blue teeth, and he finds out that he was given this thing called kablooey gum, which should definitely not be in 1549 France. So he hands it to the hunter and tells him to run it for temporal auras and stuff. They don't expect to find anything, but they're about to do the reset charge when another analyst comes through the time door, hands him a file and says, "You're going to want to see this." And it's Loki's file, this variant version of Loki. Then we go back to the TVA, and Loki is brought before Judge Renslayer, who is Gugu Mbatha Raw. And Renslayer is an important name in that it ties to Ravonna Renslayer, who is the love interest of Kang, and we know Kang is going to be played by Jonathan Majors as the bad guy in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So could those tie together? Is this Ravonna Renslayer, or is she's... I mean, the name Renslayer is not that common, so the fact that she's Judge Renslayer, I think, is a good chance that she is Ravonna Renslayer. And Mbatha Raw will be around in the MCU for a while. Now, they go through the case, and Loki says he's not guilty. He says that the Avengers are time traveling, and it's their fault. And the reason he knows they were time traveling is because he smelled the cologne of two different Tony Starks, which I just thought was brilliant, because there's a talk about Axe body spray in Avengers Endgame. But so basically he says he's not guilty. And her response is that everything the Avengers did, they were supposed to do. That it was part of the sacred timeline. So that means, which I've got a problem with, but that means coming back and getting all the Infinity Stones and then replacing them was all part of the sacred timeline. And when they say sacred timeline, there's a good chance that just means the timekeepers looked at all the different timelines, went, yeah, this one works out the best for us. That's the one we're going to follow, mush them all together and make that one, so that's sacred to them. We don't know if it's sacred to anybody else. But so all of that time, the time travel heist was part of the sacred timeline, except if Loki taking the Tesseract is what caused the variance, and his taking the Tesseract caused them to go back to an earlier date to get the Tesseract from before. Isn't anything they caused then a variance on the timeline? Wouldn't the woman in the elevator be affected? I mean, it may be minor effects, but they did have some effects. Some of the Pym particles were missing. Hank Pym may have gotten angry about that, or noticed they were missing. The Tesseract was gone for a few minutes. I mean, they didn't take the Pym particles back and replace them, did they? Maybe they did. But you see where there's a problem there, that the quick wave off answer doesn't quite cover it yet. But yeah, so everything the Avengers are supposed to, and does that mean that Cap was always supposed to stay in the past and live his life with Peggy Carter? By the way, there's some people who say that there's a variant that gets pulled in at one point in the show, and they think that's Peggy Carter. I don't think so. It's so done in the background. I mean, yes, it absolutely could have been, but I don't think so. But so interesting thing here is they refer to Loki as Laufey's son instead of Odin's son. And yes, he is the son of Laufey, but he always refers to himself as Loki, Odin's son. So that's interesting. And at one point he tries to summon his daggers and it doesn't work. And that's when they explain to him, magic doesn't work here. So he doesn't really play along. They sentence him to be reset, which they don't really give him a good definition of reset. I assume it's the disintegrate thing, but maybe it's something else, but we don't get to find out what it is. That's when Mobius approaches and says that he has this idea. He thinks he knows what Loki is capable of. And sure enough, Loki gets help. Oops. I pressed a button I wasn't supposed to press. Never mind. Okay, I'm still here. There we go. Sorry, got a little thrown off there. I've been going pretty good here, and I forgot to do a commercial break, so we should probably do a quick commercial break. JD, if you're ready, let's go ahead and do that.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are doing a deep dive and spoiler-filled review and discussion of the first episode of Loki. So before we get started, though, I want to remind you we are doing spoilers. JD, I love that thing. We're going to use that a lot. And JD is on the ball. I can just quick click and he's ready. Okay, let's get back into it. So last I was talking about Mobius just got Judge Renslayer to kind of give him Loki. She's not happy about it, but she's given him Loki to investigate this thing. And it's obviously a bad, the Minutemen are being murdered, so it's important. Now, as they're walking towards the Time Theater, which is where they're headed, Loki gets his first look at what is the TVA. And I believe it's called the Citadel at the End of Time or something like that. It's a big Marvel name. But you see this place, and it's absolutely huge. It's like something out of Blade Runner meets 2000 AD, Judge Dredd. It's just this huge city. And it's impressive as hell. And Loki's stunned by it. And he's like, I thought you said there was no magic. And Mobius is like, there's no magic. That's all real, And that's a nice establishing thing. And I think by this point, we've completed 2 of the 3 tasks. We've set up the mystery, and we've really established the TVA and what they can do. This is where we move into probably the most important part of the show, which is getting us to a point where this Loki is somebody that is malleable, is the word Kyle used for it, that is believable, that he would actually help the TVA, that he would actually give a damn about something other than himself and actually help with the investigation. And that is what Mobius is planning to do. And he takes him to the Time Theater to do this. And this is a deep dive. We get the bulk of the character growth that we had over 10 years through the Thor movies and the Avenger movies, and we get it in about 20 minutes. We learn that Loki, as the god of, one of the cool things we learn is Loki as the god of mischief actually is D.B. Cooper. You know, from the D.B. Cooper from our timeline, he did it because he lost a bet with Thor and he was young. And we find out that Mobius is actually kind of a fan of Loki's and thought this was neat. And this was the stuff that he was doing. And it wasn't until Thor was going to be crowned that Loki really went from being mischievous to being evil. And it's because that's when the issues with his feeling worthy of being Odin's son comes to play. And that's where we get to, is that everything up until the coronation, till the original Thor movie, Loki's just a trickster. You know, that's when he changes. And that's what Mobius is trying to find out, is, does he like killing? Does he like hurting people? He's trying to find out what makes Loki tick. And they go back and forth, and that's where the real rapport between, Sean talked about the rapport between Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston, and this is where it gets really good, is that they're playing with each other. It's like a cat and mouse game. But the difference is that who is the cat and who is the mouse? Loki thinks he's the cat, but he isn't, and that's the key here. At one point, he says this line that, where is it? The TVA is an illusion, a cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear. That is huge and comes back later to play. But as they're going through this, they're also discussing free choice. Loki insists that he makes his own choices. And that comes down to a theological argument that has been had for centuries. The idea that if God is watching, are we living a predetermined course or a course with foreknowledge? Basically, are we choosing things because that is what we're supposed to do? We are destined to choose those things. We really don't have free will. So we are only making those choices because we're forced to make those choices. Or by seeing what is going on, the fact that they see all of time, are they picking the timeline based on the choices we made that works out best for them? So is the sacred timeline based on predetermined actions and we're forced to make those decisions? Or is it, this is the sacred timeline because our choices made it work the best for them? So that's the big debate. And they really don't come up with an answer to that. But I think that's a really important thing that will be played out through the show. Another interesting thing is Loki keeps talking about wanting to burn the TVA down. And Mobius is kind of playing with that. He's like, well, I'll show you my desk and you can start there. He's like, there's a lot of paperwork, good for kindling for your fire. And Loki refers to the thing as a place of nightmares. And Mobius is like, that's a different department. I'll help you burn them down. So I don't know if that's supposed to be an actual reference to another department of nightmares or if it's just a throwaway line. But either way, it was really good. They bounce back and forth, and Loki isn't really taking it that seriously. So what he does, so Mobius decides to make him take it seriously by showing him his future. Now, it's our past because we've already been there, but it's this variant, what would have been his future. And that's where he goes back to Asgard. He's thrown in the dungeon and helps the Dark Elves, guides them up a certain path, which leads to the death of Frigga. And we see how that hits Loki. That hits him like a hammer. And in doing so, it really, I mean, he freaks out. He throws the chair. He tries to go after Mobius, and Mobius hits the time twister controls and throws him back. Well, it throws him into an empty space where the chair was supposed to be, but it only puts the people back, not the furniture. So Loki crashes to the ground, and when Mobius goes over to help him up, Loki pickpockets the time twister controls, like Loki would do, of course. Now, they are immediately interrupted by B-15, who shows her displeasure at what Mobius is doing with Loki, but takes him outside to explain to him that another team has been ambushed. We don't get to see much about it, but we get that scene, and then Mobius goes back in to kind of tell him, well, we'll finish up tomorrow, let's call it, because I think he's going to go and investigate the scene. Instead, he finds an empty room. Loki has uses the time twister to get out of the time theater, and he jumps around and he finds Casey. Remember the Casey from the front desk? Well, Casey has a tesseract, so he threatens him to gut him like a fish, and Casey's response is, what's a fish? But he finally complies when he threatens him with death, because Casey knows what death is, and he opens up this drawer on his rolling cart, and there's the tesseract. And then he looks inside, and there's all these other things in there. There's a Honus Wagner baseball card, which means that somebody used a time machine to go back and try to get the most valuable baseball card ever, and the TVA showed up. There's a $5,000 poker chip, which there's got to be a story there. There's a French medal and all these other things going on. And there's a bunch of Infinity Stones just sitting there. And Casey jokes about, hey, some of the people here at the TVA use them as paperweights. Some of them. So it means that some of them may use them for something else. May also be a Kang hint, who knows. But this is when Loki kind of realizes how powerful the TVA is, and that things aren't what he seems. Now, in the comics, the Infinity Stones only work in the universe where they were created. So if you took an Infinity Stone from one multiverse into another multiverse, it wouldn't work. So that could be what's going on here. By taking them out of the timeline and out of that universe, you're deactivating them, basically. And I think that might be what's going on. Because that's a better idea than, the TVA just is more powerful than the Time Stones. Well, they're more powerful than the Time Stones outside of the timeline. Because otherwise, all the threat for the first 3 phases of the MCU mean nothing. Well, B-15 comes rushing in, swinging her baton, tries to hit Loki. He uses a time twister to get away. And she hits the cart and disintegrates it and almost hits Casey. And Casey is pissed. And he goes and reports her to the TVA equivalent of HR. I like Casey. I'm telling you, he's my favorite character now. Now, Loki ends up back in the time theater. And I think everything's kind of messed up now. He's still holding the Tesseract, which is now like his safety blanket. And he starts watching the rest of the file. Now, this is, again, Loki's file. He's out of that now. But he sees Frigga's dead body. He sees where Thor and Loki find Odin in Norway. And they have the talk, and Odin says he's proud of both of his sons. He has that moment. He has the moment of fighting alongside of Thor, and Thor actually saying that you're okay, brother, and there's that bonding moment. And then he gets to the part where Thanos kills him, and you see the reaction on his face. It just, snaps into reality that he's not in control. The TVA has all the powers. He can never go back. And B-15 shows up at some point and tries to charge him, and they fight. And he uses the twister to actually get the neck thing off and put it on her. And he just starts making her jump around in her timeline and then throws her out of the room with it. But Mobius shows up and says, there's nowhere else to run. And we see a defeated Loki at this point. He's accepting that he doesn't have any real power, that the Tesseract is useless. And he's tried it a few times. And he says, the TVA is formidable. And he admits, he tells him, I don't like hurting people. I do it because I have to. And he re-says that line. He says, it's an illusion, a cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak, and he points at himself to inspire fear. He said, and he calls himself a villain. And Mobius says, I don't see it that way. And that's where he says, look, I can't offer you salvation, but I might be able to offer you something better. And that's when they start talking about the fact that he needs him to help hunt down another variant. And when Loki goes, okay, so you need the God of Mischief, but why? Why me? And that's when Mobius says, because the variant we're looking for is you. It's another version of Loki. And that's the big shoe drop. Now, of course, that's not where the episode ends. We need a little more of the mystery. We go to Salina, Oklahoma, 1858, where the Minutemen and Hunter U-92 pop in. They find this artifact in the field, and it's surrounded by oil. And the Hunter kind of goes, well, some guy obviously found a time machine, came back to, make himself rich, and just reset it. It's not worth it. Well, the oil should have been a sign. Someone appears, a hooded figure appears holding a lantern, a flaming lantern, and throws it on the ground, and the oil catches and engulfs everything and starts burning the Minutemen. The Hunter guy is crawling along trying to reach the reset thing, but gets pulled back into the flames, and we just see the hooded figure. And that's where we roll into the 6 minutes of credits. That is a bunch of scenes, just like the ending of the other Disney Plus shows, which obviously there's clues there, but I haven't had a chance to kind of dissect that. That's your episode. That is just brilliant, because by the end there, we get the Loki we need. We get the malleable Loki that is at least capable of redemption. This is a new redemption arc for the character. We get the mystery. We get it ramped up a bit. We get the tie to Loki, why him specifically, just like how Eddie Murphy's character was got out of prison because it was people he knew that they were hunting. This is Loki should know how another Loki is thinking. That's why they want him. And Mobius needs him to capture the guy or girl. There's a good chance it's a lady Loki, or it could be something else. Don't know. I think it's going to be very twisty. It's going to be wibbly wobbly, timey wimey as we go through this whole thing. And it's going to be one of those mysteries through the whole thing. I thought the first episode was absolutely brilliant. I think it hit all the things it needed to establish the TVA and the world building. It gave us the Loki we needed, and it set up the mystery. And it did so in a very entertaining way. I think Owen Wilson's Mobius is a great addition to the MCU. I already like Casey. Hunter B-15 is a little two-dimensional so far. Hopefully we'll get a little more about her. We'll get a little more about Judge Renslayer. I don't think we need to know more about Hunter U-92 because I think he's dead. But we'll delve more into some of the other variant Lokis probably. I know through the trailers we've seen what could be a Lady Loki. We've seen President Loki. There's still actors who haven't been seen yet, like Sophia DiMartino and Richard E. Grant. Both of them could be variant Lokis. All stuff we'll see as the series moves forward. But I think this has been an absolute brilliant start to a series. And it's 6 episodes. They're going to be a lot of fun. I already can't wait till next Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm eagerly looking forward to the next episode. And that's what a show should do. It should get you revved up and excited. And that's exactly what it did. pattern from now on for my show, the Dan Wickline Show, Tuesday afternoons, we will do a pre-show. Make sure you're caught up on everything. Anything else that comes out during the week about Loki, we'll cover on Tuesday. And then Thursday, this time slot, we will do the spoiler conversation review. Please come back. You can share your thoughts, your theories. Kyle can throw his questions in as much as he likes. All of that. When you get a chance, please hit the like and subscribe buttons if you like this thing. Join us on Instagram and TikTok with _EXP1. Also, sign up for our mailing list so you get a list of our schedules, which is comicshoppingexperience.com, and you can sign up for our mailing list there. I will be back next week, though on Saturday, there'll be a replay of Pop Go the Writers with myself, Paul Story, Tom Zoller, and Stephanie Cook as we talk about our influences as writers and who have influenced us the most. Okay, I am told that we've got just another minute or so I'm going to be wrapping this up pretty quick. But I want to thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Stick around the experience this weekend. We've got great shows like Nick Barucci selling original art and Dynamic Forces exclusives. We're going to have more guests going with Pride Month and just some wonderful stuff. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all of that stuff. And then I will be back here on Tuesday to see all of your, well, I was going to say all your smiling faces, but all of your comments. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, JD, for running the board. And I will see you all soon. Good night.